The sky darkened to a rust-red hue as the quartz sandstorm gathered strength on the horizon. Kalen Rorik squinted through his weather-beaten goggles, his weathered face etched with concern. The atmospheric sensors on his wrist pad screamed warnings that even his experienced eyes could already see. This would be no ordinary storm. Axiom. He called to the modified agricultural droid, trudging a few paces behind him. Time estimate on that front? The droid's optical sensors swiveled, measuring wind speed and particle density. Despite being an outdated AX-7 model, Axiom's voice contained far more personality than its factory settings would have allowed. Approximately 17 minutes until we're thoroughly scrubbed from existence, Kale. Though I suppose that's an optimistic estimate. Kale grunted, scanning the jagged landscape of Xylos. Once a promising Federation outpost, the planet was now little more than a graveyard of failed ambitions and abandoned technology, perfect for a man trying to disappear. There's a cave system about 2 clicks east, he said, adjusting the makeshift power scavenger on his back. If we push it, we can make it before the storm hits full force. Ah, another luxury accommodation, Axiom replied, mechanical joints whirring as it quickened its pace. How delightful. The trek was brutal, with the leading edge of the storm already whipping crystalline particles against their backs by the time they reached the cave entrance. Inside, the darkness swallowed them, broken only by the faint blue glow of Axiom's operational lights and the beam from Kale's shoulder lamp. Run diagnostics on our supplies, Kale ordered, shaking sand from his coat. I want to know exactly how long we can wait this one out. Water reserves at 22%. Ration packs, 3 remaining. Battery power sufficient for approximately 72 hours of minimal operation. Axiom's voice echoed in the cavern. In other words, we're skating on thin ice, as usual. Kale was about to respond when a sound, faint but distinct, reached his ears. A whimper, perhaps, or a moan. Human instinct told him to ignore it, to protect his own limited resources. But something else, something he thought he'd left behind in the war, made him raise his hand for silence. Did you hear that? My audio sensors detect a life form approximately 40 meters deeper into the cave system, Axiom confirmed. Weak life signs, but present. Kale hesitated only a moment before moving forward, his hand instinctively reaching for the blaster at his hip. The cave narrowed, then opened into a wider chamber where his light caught something unexpected, a small form huddled against the stone wall. As he approached, the features became clear, a child, but not human. The skin was a deep indigo hue, marked with subtle bioluminescent patterns that pulsed weakly. 2 enormous eyes, silver and faintly glowing, stared up at him with a mixture of fear and desperate hope. A xylothar, Kale breathed, genuinely shocked. I thought they were extinct. Evidently your information was incorrect, Axiom observed dryly. As it often is. The child, a girl Kale guessed was clearly dying. Her breathing came in ragged gasps, her small frame trembling with each inhalation. Without medical equipment, he couldn't diagnose precisely what was wrong, but the signs of dehydration and starvation were unmistakable. Cursing under his breath, Kale knelt beside her. Everything in his survivor's mind screamed that this was a mistake, that his own supplies were already dangerously low. But he found himself unclipping his water canteen and holding it to the child's cracked lips. Drink, he said softly. Slowly now. The girl's eyes widened, then fluttered as she took a tentative sip. Kale supported her head, feeling the alien warmth of her skin against his calloused palm. After a few more sips, he broke off a piece of his last protein ration and offered it to her. This tastes like recycled boot leather, he warned with a half-smile, but it'll keep you alive. The child accepted the food with trembling hands, consuming it with the reverence of the truly starving. As strength gradually returned to her small body, she looked up at Kale with unnerving intensity and spoke in halting standard. You gave sustenance. The Rite finds us now. Before Kale could ask what she meant, a voice emerged from the shadows beyond his light's reach. Melodic yet commanding, filled with both caution and authority. She speaks of the ancestral rite of sustenance. Kale whirled, blaster drawn in one fluid motion that spoke of military training far beyond that of a simple scavenger. His light revealed another Xylothar, standing at the entrance to a tunnel he hadn't noticed. Taller, with the same indigo skin, but more complex bioluminescent patterns that seemed to pulse with emotion. A female, undoubtedly, and clearly the child's mother. Despite signs of exhaustion and hunger, she carried herself with unmistakable dignity. "Who are you?" Kale demanded, though he kept his weapon pointed slightly away. A subtle sign he wasn't immediately hostile. "I am Seraphina of the Eastern Groves," she replied, her silver eyes unwavering. "And you have saved my daughter Lyra by sharing your life-sustaining resources." She took a step forward, her movements graceful despite her obvious weakness. "According to the ancestral rite, my body and service now belong to you until the debt is repaid through an act of equal measure." Kale blinked, processing her words. "Wait, what?" "Look, I just gave the kid some water and food. Basic human." He paused, correcting himself. "Basic decency. That's all." "Nevertheless, the rite has been invoked." Seraphina's voice grew solemn. "To reject it would bring dishonor and death upon both myself and my daughter. This is our most sacred covenant." "This is fascinating," Axiom interjected, mechanical head tilting in curiosity. "A cultural obligation based on survivalist principles. Quite efficient, actually." Kale shot the droid a silencing glare before turning back to Seraphina. "Listen, I don't want a servant. That's not why I helped your daughter." "Your intentions are irrelevant to the rite," Seraphina explained, her expression betraying a hint of sympathy for his confusion. "It is not about what you want, but about the balance of life and debt among our people." Kale ran a hand through his sand-crusted hair, looking between the determined mother and the weakened child. The thought of abandoning them to the storm and starvation twisted something inside him, something he'd thought long dead after years of war and isolation. "Fine," he finally said, "but only until we can get you both somewhere safe. Then we revisit this. Right business." Seraphina bowed her head slightly, the patterns on her skin brightening momentarily. "As you command, life-bearer." "Kale," he corrected with a grimace. "Just Kale." "Well," Axiom remarked cheerfully, "this expedition has certainly taken an unexpected turn. How delightful to experience the complications of cross-cultural obligations and unwanted responsibility. It truly enriches one's existence." The storm raged for 2 days, trapping them in the cave, while supplies dwindled further. During that time, Kale learned that Lyra was 8 cycles old, roughly equivalent to a human 6-year-old, and that she and her mother had been separated from their hidden community during a DMC drone patrol. Seraphina spoke little of their people, maintaining a cautious reserve that Kale recognized and respected. He, too, kept his own past closely guarded. When the storm finally abated, leaving the landscape transformed by new dunes and exposed ruins, Kale led the small group eastward toward his hidden base. "It's about a day's walk," he explained, distributing the remaining water carefully. "Stay close. This region has scavenger drones and worse." The journey across Xylos' surface was grueling. Twice they were forced to take cover as DMC patrol skimmers passed overhead. Once, they narrowly avoided a group of dune ravers, sand-dwelling predators with crystalline exoskeletons that could shred human flesh in seconds. Through it all, Kale displayed a level of tactical awareness and combat readiness that raised Seraphina's eyebrows, but prompted no questions. It was during their encounter with a malfunctioning security turret from an old Federation outpost that Kale truly revealed his capabilities. When the automated weapon suddenly activated and targeted Lyra, his response was instantaneous and lethal. Before Seraphina could even pull her daughter to safety, Kale had drawn his blaster, rolled to create a distraction, and fired 3 perfectly placed shots that disabled the turret's tracking system, power supply, and main processor in sequence. The entire engagement lasted less than 5 seconds. Impressive shooting for a scavenger, Seraphina noted quietly as they continued their journey. Kale merely shrugged. You pick things up. Yes, she agreed, her silver eyes studying him with new interest. I suppose you do. By dusk, they reached Kale's sanctuary, a hidden ravine where an ancient Federation hydroponics facility had been partially reclaimed by native xylogen plants. The integration of technology and nature had created a microclimate significantly more hospitable than the surrounding wasteland. Solar collectors and wind turbines, skillfully disguised to avoid aerial detection, provided modest power to the underground living quarters Kale had established in the facility's old maintenance section. It's not much, he said as he led them inside, but it's off DMC scanners and has clean water. It's remarkable, Serafina responded, genuine amazement in her voice as she surveyed the small ecosystem he'd nurtured. You've created harmony between technology and living systems. Kale merely repurposed what was already here, Axiom. Corrected, shuffling toward its charging station. I, however, maintain the delicate balance of this environment with my considerable agricultural expertise. Which reminds me, Kale said, we could use your help identifying which of these native plants might be edible for you and Lyra. Our supplies won't last much longer. Serafina nodded, immediately moving to examine the various flora. Several of these species are familiar to my people. This one, she indicated a spiky blue leaf plant, provides both nutrition and hydration. And this, she pointed to a small fern-like growth, can be processed for its medicinal properties. In the days that followed, Serafina fully embraced what she considered her ritual obligation. Despite Kale's insistence that she didn't need to serve him, she prepared meals from local plants, organized the scattered equipment, and even assisted with repairs using surprisingly advanced knowledge of biological interfaces that left even Axiom impressed. Lyra, meanwhile, recovered her strength quickly and revealed an ability that fascinated Kale. The young Xylothar could establish a limited telepathic connection with the smaller life forms and plants of Xylos, sensing their needs, calming them, or encouraging growth. Under her careful attention, the ravine's ecosystem flourished as never before. One evening, as Lyra slept and Kale worked on repairing a filtration system, Serafina approached him with a steaming cup of blue liquid. A stimulant beverage, she explained, offering it to him. Similar to your coffee, but with properties that enhance focus without taxing the heart. Kale accepted it with a nod of thanks, then hesitated. Serafina, we need to talk about this arrangement. She sat across from him, her luminescent patterns shifting to a calm, attentive configuration. You are uncomfortable with the Rite. I'm uncomfortable with anyone feeling obligated to serve me, he clarified, especially when that obligation came from a simple act of decency. Serafina considered his words carefully. Among my people, the Rite is not merely about servitude, but about honor and mutual protection. When resources are scarce, as they have always been for the Xylothar, such exchanges ensure our collective survival. She met his gaze directly. The debt is not eternal. It can only be repaid when the life-bearer faces mortal danger, and the life receiver has the opportunity to save them through an act of equal measure. Kale took a sip of the beverage, surprised by its pleasant taste. So you're waiting for a chance to save my life? In essence, yes. A hint of a smile touched her lips. Though I hope such an opportunity does not arise from dire circumstances. That makes two of us, Kale muttered. Their conversation was interrupted by Axiom, who rolled into the room with unusual urgency. Kale, my long-range sensors have detected abnormal activity. Multiple DMC scanning drones have entered our sector, far more than the usual patrols. Kale set down the cup, immediately alert. Pattern, grid search, Axiom replied, projecting a holographic map from its optical unit, moving systematically from the northeast. Their equipment signature suggests they're using new quantum resonance scanners. Those can detect human biological signatures even underground, Kale said grimly, already moving to access his security monitors. How would they know to look here? Serafina asked, following him. Kale's expression darkened. They might not be looking specifically for us, but if they've upgraded their search protocols, Or perhaps they are hunting my people, Serafina suggested quietly. DMC has always sought the biological secrets of the Xylothar. Our connection to this world's ecosystem holds value to them. Kale turned to face her. There are more of your people? I thought. We are not extinct, merely hidden, she confirmed. After DMC's forces destroyed our major settlements and killed many, including my husband, the survivors scattered into the deep caves and remote regions where technology struggles to function. Why didn't you tell me this before? Her silver eyes reflected the dim light of the underground chamber. Would you immediately share the location of your people with a stranger who held power over you? Kale couldn't argue with her logic. After checking the security systems once more, he made a decision. We need to prepare for the possibility of discovery. Tomorrow, we'll establish fallback positions and emergency protocols. Later that night, as Kale lay on his bunk staring at the ceiling, Axiom's voice came softly from the corner of the room where the droid was supposedly in sleep mode. You're developing feelings for her. Kale scowled. I'm concerned for their safety. There's a difference. Is there? The droid's optical sensors dimmed thoughtfully. Your heart rate elevates by 12% when she enters a room. You maintain eye contact 40%, longer than with other conversational partners. Admittedly, that sample size is rather limited these days. Don't you have some plans to analyze? I'm merely observing that your interaction patterns suggest. Enough, Axiom. The droid fell silent for a moment before adding, she watches you too, when you're occupied. Her bioluminescent patterns shift to frequencies associated with. Power down, authorization code RORIC 9-7-3, Kale snapped. Axiom made an electronic sound remarkably similar to a sigh. Very well. Engaging sleep mode. But denial is rarely productive, Kale. The droid's lights dimmed completely, leaving Kale alone with thoughts he wasn't ready to examine. About Serafina, about the strange sense of purpose he'd found in protecting her and Lyra, and about the complication that his own shadowy past would inevitably bring to their door. The next morning brought confirmation of his fears. 3 unidentified ships entered Xylos's atmosphere, their trajectory suggesting they weren't standard DMC patrols. Bounty hunters, Kale said grimly, recognizing the signature of one vessel. Specifically, Barrick's crew. You know them? Serafina asked, hurriedly gathering emergency supplies as Kale had instructed. We've met. His tone made it clear those meetings hadn't been friendly. Axiom, initiate protocol shade. Full perimeter sensors, minimal power signature. As the droid complied, Kale retrieved a hidden panel on the floor, revealing a cache of weapons far beyond the usual scavenger's arsenal. Military-grade pulse rifles, tactical explosives, and a set of combat stimulants joined his standard blaster. Serafina watched silently as he efficiently prepared for conflict, her expression revealing neither judgment nor surprise. When he caught her gaze, she simply nodded in understanding. Your past pursues you, as mine does me, she said softly. Before Kale could respond, Axiom's alert tone sounded. Vessel approaching our position. Estimated arrival, 11 minutes. How did they find us so quickly? Kale muttered, securing the last of his gear. Perhaps they didn't, Axiom suggested. Their trajectory suggests they're investigating the old Federation relay station 2 kilometers west. Close enough to be a problem, Kale decided. Serafina, take Lyra to the emergency shelter we prepared. Axiom will guide you. Serafina straightened, her silver eyes flashing. The Rite demands I remain at your side in danger. The Rite can wait. Lyra needs protection. I can help you fight, she insisted. My people have ways of manipulating the local ecosystem for defense. Kale paused, reassessing her. What kind of ways? The demonstration she provided minutes later left him speechless. Using a combination of touch and what appeared to be subvocal harmonics, Serafina communicated with the native plants around the ravine's entrance. The vegetation responded, becoming more rigid in some places, more flexible in others, creating natural barricades and camouflage that would confound both visual inspection and standard scanners. Lyra's abilities in this regard are actually stronger than mine, she explained, but less controlled due to her age. That's incredible, Kale admitted. But I still want you both in the shelter while I deal with Barrick. Who exactly is pursuing you? She asked, her direct gaze making it clear she expected honesty now. Kale hesitated, then decided she deserved at least partial truth. I wasn't always a scavenger. During the Federation DMC conflict, I served as a special reconnaissance operative. My unit specialized in infiltration, asset denial, and, occasionally, removal of key personnel. You were an assassin, she translated. Among other things. He checked his weapons one last time. My last mission went wrong. Very wrong. The target was supposed to be a DMC weapons developer, but turned out to be working on a peace negotiation. By the time I discovered the truth, my team had already completed the objective. And you were betrayed, Serafina concluded, reading between the lines. Someone wanted that peace negotiation to fail. When I started asking questions, I became a liability. His jaw tightened. Barrick was part of the cleanup crew sent to eliminate me. Obviously, he failed, and now he's found you. It seems that way. A sudden alert from the perimeter sensors interrupted them. Kale's expression hardened as he checked the readout. Change of plans. They're here. The attack came at dawn. 6 mercenaries led by Barrick, a hulking cyborg whose left eye had been replaced by a targeting system Kale himself had damaged in their last encounter. They approached with military precision, utilizing cover and suppressive fire techniques that confirmed Kale's suspicion. These weren't simple bounty hunters, but former Special Forces operators. Kale had prepared accordingly. The first wave triggered his carefully placed proximity mines immediately, eliminating 2 attackers and disorienting the others. Taking advantage of the confusion, he picked off a third with precise shots from his elevated position among the ravine rocks. What he hadn't prepared for was Barrick's new tech, a neural disruptor that sent waves of paralyzing pain through Kale's body when activated. He fell from his perch, managing to control his descent enough to avoid serious injury, but landing hard behind limited cover as Barrick and his remaining men advanced. I know you can still hear me. Rorik, Barrick called, his voice a mechanical rasp through his damaged vocal cords. Another souvenir from their previous encounter. The bounty doesn't specify what condition you need to be in, just recognizable. Kale fought through the neural disruption, his muscles spasming as he tried to reach for his backup weapon. His vision blurred, but he could make out Barrick's approaching form, the mercenary's augmented arm transforming into a wicked-looking blade. Your Federation friends paid well, but DMC doubled the offer, Barrick continued, clearly enjoying the moment. Seems you're still valuable to someone. Through the haze of pain, Kale noticed movement behind Barrick, a flash of indigo skin. No, he thought desperately. Run. But Serafina wasn't running. As Barrick raised his blade for a disabling strike, the ground beneath him suddenly erupted with writhing vines, native Xylosian creepers that normally remained dormant beneath the sand. They wrapped around his cybernetic limbs, their naturally occurring silicon crystals interfering with his augmentation circuitry. Barrick roared in confusion and anger, slashing at the plants with his blade arm. His momentary distraction gave Kale the opening he needed. Fighting through the neural disruption, he raised his blaster and fired 3 shots, one disabling the disruptor device on Barrick's belt, and 2 more into vulnerable junction points in the cyborg's armor. Barrick staggered, but didn't fall. His remaining human eye fixed on Kale with murderous rage as he tore free from the vines and lunged forward. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Serafina darted between them, her hands pressed to the ground. The sand beneath Barrick liquefied instantly as microbial colonies responded to her command, creating a sinkhole that swallowed him to the waist. Before the mercenary could free himself, crystal formations erupted from the quicksand, encasing his lower body in a naturally formed prison. Barrick howled in rage and pain, but he was effectively immobilized. His remaining men, seeing their leader captured and half their force eliminated, retreated to their vessel and fled the planet's surface. Kale struggled to his feet as the neural disruption faded, staring at Serafina in amazement. How did you? The Xylothar have lived in harmony with Xylos for millennia, she explained, her breathing heavy from the exertion. We understand its systems in ways outsiders never could. You saved my life, Kale said, the significance of her actions suddenly clear. Seraphina straightened, her bioluminescent patterns glowing with intensity. An act of equal measure, as required by the Rite. She met his eyes directly. The debt is paid. I am released from my obligation to you. A complex mix of emotions crossed Kale's face. Relief, respect, and something that might have been regret. Before he could respond, Axiom emerged from hiding, Lyra close behind. Fascinating application of microbial acceleration, the droid observed, examining the crystalline formation imprisoning the now unconscious Barrick. Though I must point out that our security situation has been thoroughly compromised. More will come. Kale nodded grimly. We need to move. Now. They worked quickly, gathering essential supplies and destroying anything that could be used to track them. Barrick they left alive, but securely restrained, with an anonymous transmission sent to DMC revealing his location. A small revenge that might buy them time while his employers dealt with his failure. As they prepared to depart, Seraphina approached Kale. The rite is complete. I'm no longer bound to you. Her voice was formal, but her eyes held uncertainty. My daughter and I will return to our people in the deep caverns. Kale absorbed her words, a tightness forming in his chest that had nothing to do with his recent injuries. He looked at Lyra, who had grown attached to both him and Axiom, then back to Seraphina. Is that what you want? He asked quietly. What I want. She hesitated, the patterns on her skin shifting through complex configurations. What I want has not been relevant since DMC destroyed our settlement and killed my bondmate. Survival has been my only concern. And now I am free to choose. Her silver eyes searched his. But the question remains, what do you choose, Kale Rorik? Your path has always been solitary by design. Kale glanced at Axiom, who somehow managed to convey expectation despite its immobile metal features. Then to Lyra, who watched the adults with solemn understanding beyond her years. I think, he said carefully, that solitary paths are overrated, especially on a planet like Xylos. Indeed, Axiom interjected. Statistically speaking, your survival rate improves by approximately 64% with our current group configuration. Is that your only reason? Seraphina asked, a hint of challenge in her voice. Kale stepped closer to her, close enough to see the subtle pulse of light beneath her indigo skin. No, he admitted, not even close. The smile that spread across her face illuminated her features more brilliantly than any bioluminescence. Without the constraints of the rite between them, she reached out to touch his face with slender fingers that left a trail of warmth. Then where do we go from here? She asked. Kale's answer was interrupted by urgent alerts from Axiom's sensors. I hate to intrude on this long-overdue emotional breakthrough, the droid announced, but multiple spacecraft have entered low orbit. DMC signatures, military grade. Lyra clutched Seraphina's hand, fear evident in her young face. They're coming for us, aren't they? Because of what happened to the angry metal man. Kale knelt to meet the child's eyes. Maybe, but they're going to be disappointed because we won't be here. He looked up at Seraphina. Do your people have room for a couple more? She understood his meaning immediately. You would join us in the deep caverns? For now, he nodded. And maybe after that, we find someplace better. Together. I'm extremely touched to be included in these plans, Axiom noted dryly. Seraphina held Kale's gaze, a new determination replacing the formal reserve she had maintained under the rite. My people will be cautious about outsiders, but they will accept you when they understand what you've done for us. Her hand found his, their fingers intertwining. And I will stand with you, not because of any ritual obligation, but because I choose to. As will I, Kale promised. Lyra smiled, her small hand reaching up to join theirs. Family, she said simply, as they departed the ravine. Heading toward the distant mountains where the hidden Xylothar communities awaited, Kale found himself reflecting on the strange path that had led him here. A simple act of sharing water and food with a starving child had set in motion events that transformed his isolated existence into something with purpose and connection. Axiom, trudging beside them with equipment strapped to its frame, seemed to read his thoughts. Quite remarkable how the most significant trajectories of our lives often pivot on the smallest decisions, isn't it? Kale looked at Serafina, walking ahead with Lyra, the two of them already working together to communicate with the local flora to ensure safe passage. Some decisions only seem small at the time, he replied. Looking back, they were always turning points waiting to happen. Poetic, Axiom observed. Inaccurate, but poetic. Kale laughed. A genuine sound that surprised even himself. Ahead of them lay uncertainty, danger, and the challenge of bridging two very different worlds. But for the first time since he'd fled to this desolate planet, he moved toward the future rather than away from the past. The harsh sun of Xylos climbed higher, casting their shadows before them as they journeyed toward the mountains and toward home. 3 months later, the settlement of New Haven grew within the vast cavern system that housed the remaining Xylothar. What had begun as a temporary refuge had evolved into something more permanent, as Kale's tactical knowledge and Axiom's technical expertise merged with Xylothar biological science to create defenses that rendered them virtually undetectable to DMC scanners. While initial distrust had been inevitable, Serafina's status among her people and Kale's willingness to share crucial information about DMC operations gradually earned him acceptance. When a small DMC expedition ventured too close to the caverns, it was Kale who led the Xylothar in a defense that left no survivors to report their location, but also recovered valuable equipment and intelligence. The Council of Xylothar elders recognized the change he had brought. "You fed one child," the eldest told him during a gathering ceremony, "and in doing so, helped preserve our entire people." Lyra thrived in the community, her natural abilities strengthening under the guidance of Xylothar mentors. She maintained her special bond with Kale, often bringing him curious specimens from the cavern ecosystem or sitting quietly while he cleaned his weapons, asking thoughtful questions about the world beyond Xylos. Axiom found unexpected purpose in helping the Xylothar improve their agricultural techniques, creating hybrid systems that increased food production without taxing the delicate cave environment. The droid seemed almost content, though it maintained its sardonic commentary on human and Xylothar behavior alike. As for Kale and Serafina, their relationship deepened beyond the initial attraction into something neither had expected to find in the wasteland of Xylos. Free from the constraints of the Rite, they discovered a partnership based on mutual respect, shared purpose, and eventually, love. One evening, as they stood on a high ledge overlooking the vast fungal forest that filled the main cavern, Serafina took Kale's hand. "My people have a saying," she told him, her voice soft in the bioluminescent glow that lit the massive space. "What sustains life creates bonds stronger than blood." Kale smiled, drawing her closer. "On Earth, we might say the family you choose is stronger than the family you're born to." "And have you chosen Kale Rorik?" she asked, her silver eyes searching his. His answer came without hesitation. "I did the moment I decided not to leave you and Lyra in that cave." He paused, his expression growing serious. "But there's something you should know. The people hunting me won't stop. Sooner or later, they'll find a way to track me here. Then we will face them together," she replied with quiet certainty. "Not because of any ritual obligation, but because that is what family does." From the shadows nearby, Axiom's voice drifted toward them. "If you two are quite finished with this emotional exchange, the Council is waiting to discuss the reconnaissance data from the eastern sectors." Kale laughed, keeping his arm around Serafina as they turned back toward the heart of the settlement. "Some things never change, and some things change everything," Serafina replied, her fingers intertwining with his. As they walked together through the glowing cavern that had become their home, Kale reflected that his long journey of escape had finally ended. In its place, something entirely unexpected had begun. Not a binding obligation, but a freely chosen purpose that had transformed the barren wasteland of his existence into something worth fighting for. And if danger came, when it came, they would face it not as individuals bound by ancient rites, but as a family forged in the harsh crucible of Xylos. Together,